Here's something strange. This and this can come from the exact same furnace, sometimes the exact same batch. So, how does anyone know what's actually inside either one? Not by looking at it. Color? Shine? Weight? None of that tells you the real composition. You could have two pieces of steel that look identical, and one is safe to build a bridge with, and the other will fail under load because of a difference you cannot see with your eyes. That's the whole problem chemists solve when they analyze metallurgical materials. And what's cool is the tool they use, some of them over a century old, are still basically unbeaten for accuracy. In this video, I want to walk through 7 of these materials: iron and steel, iron slugs, limestone, copper matte, reverberatory slug, alloys, and coppers that's contaminated with other metals. Each one hides different information, and each one needs a complete different trick to pull that information out. Let's start with iron and steel, because the question here sounds almost too simple. Is this cast iron, wrought iron, or steel? Those three materials can come from the same ore, and yet one is brittle enough to shatter like glass, and the other you can bend a ship's hull out of it. What's the difference? It's not really the iron, it's the carbon. And we're talking about the difference of a few percent, sometimes less than 1%, deciding whether a material is brittle or tough. So, first, you don't just grab a chunk of metal, you drill or mill it at several points. Because if the carbon isn't evenly mixed through the piece, testing one spot could lie to you. Then, to find the iron itself, chemists dissolve the sample in acid, force all the iron into one chemical state, and titrate it. Basically, drip in a reagent drop by drop until a color change tells you the exact moment the reaction is complete. That color change is the entire measurement. It's like a chemical stopwatch that stops itself. But the real star is carbon. To measure it, you literally burn the sample in pure oxygen and capture the carbon dioxide that comes off, and amount of gas tells you the amount of carbon that was locked inside a solid piece of metal. Sulfur, phosphorus, manganese, and silicon get measured too, because even trace amounts of this can make a steel crack or corrode in ways engineers need to predict in advance. Now, here's some material most would throw away without a second thought. It's slag. It's the leftover glassy waste that floats on top of molten iron. Except it's not waste. Not to a metallurgist. It's basically a report card for the entire furnace. Slag quench fast, so it doesn't have time to separate into layers, and it's ground into powder. Then chemists dissolve out the silica, the glassy sand-like part, and weight it directly. But the interesting part is the iron that's still trapped in there. If a furnace is running well, hardly any iron should be lost to the slug. If it's running badly, you're literally throwing money away in that black glassy rock. So measuring how much iron oxide is in the slug is a direct measurement of how much metal you failed to recover. There's also a number metallurgists watch closely: the ratio of the calcium oxide to silica in in the slag, called the basicity. Get that ratio right, and the furnace strips sulfur out of the iron efficiently. Get it wrong, and the sulfur, one of the steel's worst enemies, stays behind in the metal. Before limestone ever goes into a furnace, someone has to answer a deceptively simple question: how pure is it? Because limestone isn't the material being made into metal, it's the flux, the ingredient added specifically to grab impurities and drag them out as slag. If the limestone itself is full of impurities, it can't do its job. So the sample gets crushed and dried, then dissolved in acid. Anything that refuses to dissolve, sand, clay, other silicate junk, gets filtered out, dried, and weighed. That's leftover residue is called the acid insoluble matter. And it's basically a purity score. The less residue, the purer the limestone. Then calcium itself gets precipitated out as a solid measured either by titration or by a technique called EDTA titration, which uses a molecule that grabs onto calcium ions like a claw. Magnesium is measured the same way afterward. And there's a fast shortcut too. Just heat the sample and see how much weight it loses. Since pure calcium carbonate releases carbon dioxide gas when it decomposes. Less weight lost than expected? There's your impurity right there without a single reagent. Copper doesn't come out of the ground as copper. It comes out with mixed iron and sulfur in a molten mixture called matte. And matte is a strange in between material, not ore anymore, but not copper yet either. Because it's a sulfide, chemists have to move fast once it's dissolved, or oxygen in the air will quietly change the sample before it's even measured. To find the copper content, there's a genuinely clever trick. Copper ions, when mixed with iodide, will actually pull electrons away from produced iodine, and iodine turns a starch solution a very obvious dark blue. So you titrate that iodine away with a reducing agent, and the exact moment the blue disappears tells you indirectly exactly how much copper was there. You're not measuring copper directly at all. You're measuring the copper that did to something else. Iron in the matte gets measured in the same way as in the iron in the steel section, and sulfur and nickel are pulled out and weighed as solids. All of this matters because matte is graded on copper content. The higher the copper, the less energy it takes to refine the rest of the way to pure metal. This is basically the copper version of the iron slug problem, but with much higher stakes. In a laboratory furnace, a furnace that heats in the charge indirectly by bouncing flames and heat of the roof. You're trying to separate copper from everything else, and the slug from this process is almost always carries a little bit of copper away with it, dissolved or trapped as tiny droplets. The major components, silica, iron, calcium oxide, get measured the same way as before, but the number everyone actually cares about is the trace copper left behind. Because copper is valuable, and even a small percentage loss into tons and tons of slug adds up to real money walking out the furnace door. So chemists measure it as a level of precision the way the other elements, sometimes using electrolysis, literally plating the copper out of solution atom by atom onto an electrode just to catch every last trace. In a real sense, this single measurement is an efficiency report for the whole smelting operations. Here's a puzzle. Brass and bronze can look almost the same, the warm golden color, and they're completely different materials with different uses, different strength, different melting points. Brass is copper mixed with zinc. Bronze is copper mixed with tin. Cannot tell them apart by eye, so how do you tell them apart at all? You have to pull them apart chemically, one metal at a time. For brass copper gets measured with an iodide trick again, and zinc gets isolated separately, often using molecule on locks onto zinc, specifically while ignoring the copper still in the solution. For bronze, there's always an elegant step. Add water in the right conditions, and tin when hydrolyzed, react with water, and fall out of the solution as solid on its own, almost separating itself. The solids get heated and weighed as tin oxide. For more complex alloy steels with chromium, nickel, and molybdenum, vanadium all mixed together, you're essentially untangling a knot of 5 or 6 metals from one sample. That's why alloys are one of the most hardest analysis here. You're not measuring one thing. You're proving exactly what recipe was used to make the material blind after the fact. One. It's about something you'd assume is simple. How pure is this copper? Copper wiring, copper cathodes, copper going into anything electrical. Purity isn't a nice to have here. It's the whole point. Because even a tiny amount of another metal mixed in can be measurably drop copper's ability to conduct electricity. The most elegant way to check this electrolysis, dissolve the sample, run a current through it, and pure metallic copper physically plates itself onto a weighed electron, atom by atom, leaving the impurities behind in the solution. You pull the electrode out, weigh it again, and in weights is your answer. No titration, no color change, just copper literally separating itself or out under electrical current. Then the leftover impurities gets identified one by one. Lead precipitates out a solid and gets weighed, and nickel gets grabbed by a specific reagent. Zinc is measured after masking the copper, and silver, even at incredibly low levels, gets caught and weighed. Commercial grade copper is graded almost entirely how long these numbers come out, because in the end, what makes copper valuable isn't the copper, it's the absence of everything else. So look back at everything we just discovered. Iron, steel, and iron slugs, limestone, copper matte, the laboratory slug, alloys, and copper check for other metals. Seven completely different materials, seven different problems, and yet almost every single method traces back to just three basic tricks: precipitate something out and wait it, titrate something until the color changes, or run a current through it and let the metal separate itself. That's the part I find genuinely impressive. None of these needs a supercomputer or a particular particle accelerator. It's chemistry that's over 100 years old in some cases, still being used today because a color change, or an electric current can tell you what an incredible precision exactly what's hiding inside a material you can't see at all. Thank you very much.